We are here with Mauricio, Pezo and Sofia from Ellricshausen. And I wanted to ask you both to begin with the beginning. What was your epiphany? How did you come to architecture?
In my case, it was a very logical decision. I always liked the arts, and I always liked, my father's a scientist, and so I think architecture was a very logic career to combine those two. So it was, in a way, a very cold and straightforward decision. And
in my case, it was because I wanted to, like, ideally, when I was a teenager, I wanted to be an artist. So this was a way of getting closer to that area.
And who were your heroes or influences in the field of architecture? What are also arts? Who inspired you?
In architecture, there are several influences. For example, there are a first category, which are like the main masters that I suppose that they are always present in education, like the big names. But there are some people that are close to us as a person, as someone that you can talk with. So I had some professors that were very influential. Some geographers, Chilean geographers, people interested in semiotics or in history, but in a very close context.
in my case, I studied in Buenos Aires. It's a massive university where you can choose really from very different teachers. So I think more than positive input I realized what I didn't want to do, which is also a way of education. So I learned a lot from them, but then I knew exactly that was not what I was interested in. So I won't give any names.
Part of this project here is also to protest against forgetting. So we talk a lot of pioneers who might have inspired the generation of architects working now from the past. And I was wondering if in the context of Argentina or Chile, there were any pioneers or, visionary architects of previous generations who gave you courage at the beginning. And when I read in the previous interview that Rodrigo Pérez de Arce somehow was important. Maybe.
Yes.
He was one of my professors. I made my thesis with him, and I worked with him. And actually, in the main square, the main plaza of Santiago, the reconstruction of that space, which is the main or the center of political and social and cultural debate. So, and we are very close, and he was very generous in sharing his. I could define it as his attitude towards architecture as something more flexible and something like a tool with which you can negotiate with a society. So, he has an enormous influence in younger generations. He's very into education.
So we need to urgently interview him.
Yeah.
What about Clorindo Testa?
Well, those like Clorindo Testa or Amancio Williams, they're the big figures in Buenos Aires, no? And I think they were very strong, and of course you walk around their buildings and they're always present, but there's a very different educational approach in Argentina and in Chile. I think in Chile, probably it's a smaller society, so teachers have a very close contact with students, and they have this generosity of triggering young generations to do their own thing. In Argentina, it works a bit different. These big figures somehow swallow younger generations into their body of work and body of collaborators. So I think there's a period in Argentina that it's almost like a whole lost generation of architects that have adapted to bigger figures and somehow given their efforts into their line of thought. And that's not the case in Chile. I think the healthy scene that is in Chile at the moment is a consequence of teachers such as Rodrigo Pérez de Arce.
Because I just wanted to ask about this because Chile is very present in this architecture biennale here. Fabrizio Galanti has told me for years about the Chile Milagro, that it's a real miracle what's happening in Chile. How would you explain that? Does it have to do with constraints? Does it have to do with a particular maybe solidarity or energy among the architects? Does it have to do, because you have it also in the art world, all of a sudden somewhere, like at the moment in Bogota, there is this amazing art scene, or in Medellin there is a great architecture scene, it just pops up, no?
Maybe taking the case of what is happening now in Colombia, that's a plan. That's an organized plan to make the city a better place. So they selected several architects, but there is a whole view of the system. In the case of Chile, this has been built by individual contributions. So there wasn't a plan, a real plan. This was just individual activities, like talented persons who were doing their work.
But I think it's really important what I was saying before, that since there was in Chile there was no big monster, such as monster in a positive term as Niemeyer in Brazil or Testa or in Buenos Aires. Younger generations had a bit the freedom of expanding, and that combined with very generous teachers that would push them to do their own things, I think resulted in what has happened lately.
And there is also now a kind of anxiety for belonging to that circuit. So due to the distant position of Chile, now Chile is very connected. There are several web pages and platforms to communicate architecture. So most of the architects are trying to be in that circuit of references. But the previous generation, the architects who were like developing the quality of the basic quality of architecture, they were still isolated, working in their own ideas. So they had the time and I think the quietness to define their own approach. So, and I think that now it's a little bit more contaminated with this anxiety for being outside. That's a typical word that in Chile we use to be, or to study, or to be outside. It's outside.
And that's new, kind of.
Huh?
It's a recent phenomenon.
Yeah. But it's traditional, the idea of crossing the border, because Chile is very defined by the Pacific, the Andes. So the notion of being outside to seeing, to knowing what is happening outside that barrier, and to importing, to copying somehow this ideal way of doing or producing architecture.